Please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber will continue to hear the testimony of witness Sovic. And after the conclusion, then we will commence hearing the testimony of TCW 754 as scheduled. The graduate, Mrs. Sakalwati, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to today's proceeding? Sakalwati, Mr. President, all parties to this case are present except Counsel Michael Kanavas, the International Counsel for Ieng Sari, is absent due to personal reason. Ieng Sari and Nuchi are present in the holding cells downstairs due to health reasons. Today, the chamber will continue to hear the testimony of the witness Sovic, who is already present in the courtroom. As for the next witness, that is TCW 754, is present to be called by the chamber. This witness confirms to his best knowledge and ability he has no relationship by blood or by law to any of the three accused, i.e. Ieng Sari, Kisampon and Nuon Chi, or any of the civil parties recognized in this case. The witness also took an oath this morning. This witness does not have a duty counsel. President, thank you. The chamber would like to inform the parties and the public that this morning we received the medical report of Ieng Sari by the treating physician, that is Dr. Lam Si Butta, who examined him. He is fatigued, dizzy, and that he cannot participate in the courtroom. He recommends to the chamber that we shall allow him to follow the proceeding through a remote means, that is from the holding cells downstairs. That is in the same view as expressed by the chamber yesterday after we reviewed the medical report indicated yesterday. For that reason, we instructed him to be placed in the holding cell downstairs with the audio-visual links so that he can participate remotely. This morning, the chamber also received another medical report from the same doctor after his examination of the accused Nuon Chi. Nuon Chi is fatigued, dizzy while sitting, and he is exhausted, and that he cannot sit for long. For that reason, the physician recommends to the chamber that he shall participate in the proceeding through a remote means, that is from the holding cell downstairs. Although Nuon Chi has some health concerns, he can participate through a remote means as recommended by the physician. And in order to avoid any substantial delay and for the sake of justice, And based on the recommendation in the medical report by the treating physician, the chamber orders Mr. Nuji to follow the proceedings through a remote means from the holding cell downstairs. That applies for the whole day proceeding. AV unit, you are instructed to link the proceeding to the holding cells downstairs so that the two accused can participate remotely. The floor is now given to Khieu Samphan's defense to continue putting a question to this witness. You may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Witness, good morning, first of all. I would like to revisit or to look at a statement that was presented to you yesterday by the prosecutor and which concerns Mr. Tassot. Mr. Tassot, who was examined in 2008 or questioned by the investigators in 2008 and who passed away. And he was also questioned the day before he died. And I would like to submit to you a few segments from his statement, because you spoke about Mr. Tassot at length yourself, whom you described as K1's deputy chief, therefore working under the orders of Tan. And I would like to ask you, first of all, if you can confirm that Tassot was indeed Tan's deputy at K1.
But Tassot was the deputy chief of K1.
And for how long, if you remember, for how long was he Tan's deputy? Was he still his deputy when the Vietnamese came into Phnom Penh in January 1979, for example?
He was the deputy chief of K1 office until 1978, if I recall it correctly. And upon the arrival of the Vietnamese troops in 1979, Pol Pot and his protection unit fled to the west of the country. At that time, Sot was no longer the deputy chief of K1. He actually replaced Tan, so he was the chief of the K1 office.
So, if I understood properly what you just said, in 1979, Sot had become the chief of K1 instead of Tan. Is that what you are telling us?
In 1979, K1 office no longer existed. They actually moved to a location west of the country. That location was no longer called K1.
Yes, of course, I understand. But I was referring to my previous question. Before the arrival of the Vietnamese, that is to say at the end of 1978 or at the very, very, very beginning of 1979, Sot had therefore replaced Tan as the chief of K1. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. In late 1978, at K1 office, Sot was still a deputy chief. And even in early 79, he was still deputy.
D'accord.
Fine, okay. Now I would like to submit to you in general terms what Mr. Tassot said when he was questioned in 2008 and he was asked what his activities had been during Democratic Kampuchea, and he never said that he had been at the head of K1. He described his activity as being, first of all, the activity of the chief of office K12, which was an office in charge of drivers located between the monks' hospital and the Psar Tmei. And he said that as of the end of 1976, I left Phnom Penh and I went to lead troops at the Vietnamese border. And he remained there based on what he has said. He said that he remained on the Vietnamese border until the arrival of the Vietnamese in Phnom Penh. So what does this statement suggest to you? Because you can see that Tassot does not speak at all about his responsibilities at K1. So what he's saying, does it seem credible to you, or does it make you think about something else? What is your reaction?
Between 1976 to 1977, I could not grasp his background of what he did. I saw him at K1 office in 1978. It was actually around mid-1978. In addition to his bodyguard for Noon Chi accompanied him through various zones throughout the country, he had another position. That is, he worked with Tan until the time they fled when the Vietnamese arrived in 1979. And he was in that capacity as the deputy chief. And when Tan was not available, he would take charge. He would replace him in his capacity. And he was there in that capacity for almost 1 year. And that was the fact. However, as I stated earlier, before that date, that is between 1975 to 1977, I did not know where he lived or what he did. I also stated that with the investigators of the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges, to the best of my knowledge. And that is all.
Yes, and thank you very much for this. This is why I am asking you to comment on this difference between what you said about Sot and what Sot said about himself. So therefore you do confirm, or in any case, based on what you know and based on what you observed, that as of 1977, Tassot was based in Phnom Penh and not on the Vietnamese border heading troops. Is that correct?
I saw him in 1978, not 77. I saw him working there and acting in Tan's place, and that was in 1978.
D'accord.
Fine. And you also said in your statement in 2005, or you very often associated Tan with Sut. In fact, practically each time when you described the powers of your superiors, and you would mention both of these people, and at one point you said, or at one point you describe Peng's arrest, and you say to the investigators who are questioning you on that day that it is through Tan and Sut that you learned that Peng had been arrested and accused of treason. Do you remember having said that to the investigators? Can you confirm this?
I did not say Tan or Sot arrested Peng. I did not say that. What I stated.
Nous nous méprenions.
Let me please interrupt you. That's not what I said. I'm sorry. There might have been a problem with the interpretation. I said that you had said that you had learnt from Tan and Sot that Peng had been arrested and accused of treason. I did not say that you said that Tan and Sut had arrested Peng. You simply said that that is how, or it is through them, that you learnt that Peng had been arrested. And can you confirm this?
Yes, I stand by that statement. Tan said that. However, there was no meeting with such announcement. Only he talked in private that Peng was a traitor, and that happened a few months after Peng's arrest. At that time, Tan, Sot, and other combatants were there when he made that speech. However, it was not an official meeting when he talked about the treason by Peng. And of course, I stand by my statement.
Donc,
so therefore, since Sut attended or was aware of Tan's statement, Sut was therefore informed as of then of Peng's arrest and of the fact that Peng had been accused of treason. Is that the case?
Yes, that is correct. Because at that time, he said that Peng was a traitor and that he had been arrested.
So, yes, I would now like to submit to your attention again what Tassot said when he was questioned in 2008 by the investigators on this issue. And this is document E3/464, French ERN 00503947, Khmer 00204741, English 00226109. And I quote, free translation, "One day, Peng's driver told me that Peng had died, that he had been killed by bandits, shot down when he went to pick up supplies, such as small boats, Korean boats, in the Kampong Som harbor. And he died in a place located between Srey Ambel and Ville Rien." Please, I apologize for the pronunciation. So what do you think about what Tassot said here in 2008 regarding what he knew about Pong's death?
I do not wish to make any conclusion based on this individual statement, because while I was there, I did not know anything about this matter. I did not know the actual reasons for Pong's death. I only heard what you just read, and that's new to me. And I did not hear about this before.
Fine. So I won't continue with this point. And now I would like to turn to a little point of detail. You were questioned yesterday about the vehicle that Mr. Kyosampan used, and you said that it was a rather modest vehicle compared to the cars driven by the other leaders. And I would like to ask you simply, what was the situation with his safety? You said that Mr. Kyosampan would travel within Phnom Penh when you would see him with his driver. So, but what about the other leaders? Was there any kind of system set up for their security? Did they have bodyguards? Was there here a difference again between what you saw with Mr. Kyosampan and what you saw with the other leaders?
Response. Concerning Mr. Kyosampan's vehicle, I already made it clear yesterday that he would take the Lambrata vehicle when he came to work at K1. And it is true. And there were no people escorting him other than a single driver. And that's what I observed. Every time I stood guard at the premises, I would just only see him by himself with his driver on that vehicle coming to the workplace. And comparing his situation to the other leaders, including Nuon Chea, Ieng Sari, and Pol Pot, these individuals normally were accompanied by a few drivers, or at least there must always be another vehicle following their car. It's different from that of Kyosampan.
Je voudrais également que vous soyez un petit peu plus précis.
I would like you to be more specific as to how you got to K1. In your interview, you described the security measures at K1 in three ways. You said, broadly speaking, there was a zone around K1 guarded by a battalion, and there were about 500 guards. And then you had the second level, that is where you were working. You also said that there was an area enclosed by guard posts, and there were about 60 guards present. Then you described the first level, that was Within the premises you guarded, and you said there were about 10 bodyguards stationed there, would you confirm, generally speaking, this description that I've just relayed to you?
Response: Yes, I still stand by my statement. I may be mistaken when I talked about number of people at the third level or third layer. I stated that the third layer of guards would be stationed about 2 to 3 kilometers from the premises, and it is correct that the rough estimation of the distance of the group who stood guard there, and the group of people who guarded the premises comprised of a small battalion. And concerning the second layer of guard unit, because I work there, I belong to this layer as well. There were about 50 to 60 people, and the number of people is accurate. It's about 50 to 60 people, and we stay there, and I still stand by this statement. Concerning the first level or layer, there were about 10 people. It's my rough estimation, and I still believe that it is the correct estimation, because even the number could reach 20. I still feel that there were roughly 10 or to 20 people, so I believe that my estimation is correct.
D'accord.
Very well. When someone wanted to gain access to K1, at what level was that person's identity cross-checked? Where would they ask for his ID? Where would his vehicle be checked? And where would they ask him to which office he was going?
Response: I do not know whether vehicles would be stopped and checked at the third layer for those who would like to gain access to K1. However, there was no check being made at the second layer, because when the vehicles and people could gain access to the second level, these vehicles and people would be allowed to go all the way to K1 directly.
Et pour parvenir à passer la palissade,
In order to get across the layer you guarded, would you have had to open the gate, or the gate was already open and vehicles could get in freely?
Response: Indeed, the gate would be there, and that we would be ready to open the gate when people were coming and have them closed when they entered or left the building.
et à aucun moment, lorsque vous ouvriez ou fermiez,
And you did not ask those driving vehicles that wanted to get into K1, you wouldn't ask them to which office they were going or who they were going to see. That did not come under your duties, did it?
Response: Apart from the important people, there was no other people coming to the place. So we believe that only important people would come to the place, and we would never dare ask any questions.
D'accord.
Very well. You described the K1 building, saying that there were 4, 5, or 6 stories. I don't quite remember. Would you be able to tell us how many offices there were inside that building and the number of people who work there on a daily basis? Are you able to give us the number of people or an estimate of the number of people who worked at K1, that is in the 4 or 5 stories you refer to?
Response. As I already stated earlier, when it comes to K1, we refer to the first and second story of the building, and there were about 10 people working at various sections, including the cleaners, the vegetables, delivery persons, and people who kept the garden well organized, and also the guards. These people had to work in the complex, and on the second story it was the same. There were cooks, there were people who raised the domestic animals and pigs, and at the same time they had 2 jobs, working as the cooks and also bodyguards. So these are the number of people I can say who worked there.
Donc en fait, mais détrompez-moi si ça n'est pas le cas.
Tell me if I am wrong. What you are saying is that you are not in a position to give us an estimate of the number of people working there. I haven't quite understood your testimony. You do not seem to have given me any number. Are you in a position to give me a number or not? If you are not able to answer my question, say so.
The President, co-prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Mr. President, we'd object to this question. The witness did answer. He gave numbers, and counsel now is just badgering and arguing with the witness. So we would object to the question as repetitive and argumentative.
Si je puis répondre, Monsieur le Président.
May I respond, Mr. President? I am somewhat taken aback at the prosecutor's objection. Perhaps he heard numbers in English, but I didn't hear any. The witness's testimony is not clear, and I'm asking him to furnish further clarifications, and he is free to tell us what he knows. He is free to answer my question, which is an open one.
The President, the objection is not sustained, and the witness is now instructed to respond to the question. Response. Just now, he asked me about the number of people who lived and worked at K1, what they did, for example. I already described to him precisely. I said on the first story there were cooks and so on and so forth. The President, indeed, you already responded to this, but how many people were there? Can you say so? Response. On the first floor, there were roughly 10 people working there, and on the second floor, there were about 50 to 60 people. I believe I already talked about this on number of occasions already during the course of my testimony. The President, Council, you may proceed to another question if you still have.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have talked of the first and the second floors. And can you tell us how many people worked on the third floor on every occasion?
Response. I do not think I understand your question. When you talked about the above floor or story, you're referring to the other floor of the building. I think there were about a battalion of people. The President interrupts. I believe that Council perhaps be mistaken by the story of the building, because when it referred to the story of the building in Khmer, it could have been mistaken for the layer of the security guard, because there are 3 circles of guard unit at the premises, and at the same time, when it referred to the circle or level, it could also be misinterpreted as the first and second floor or third story of the building. So, because the witness already emphasized that one layer to another would be about 2 kilometers apart, not the building itself.
D'accord, j'ai compris, Monsieur le Président.
Very well, Mr. President. I have understood. I had overlooked the risk of this confusion. Witness, please feel free to answer my questions and to say you do not know, excluding the security staff, excluding the people you have already referred to, who worked at the 3 security layers around K1 and within K1. Apart from security officers, how many people worked at K1? Are you in a position to give us an estimate of the number of people who worked in the K1 offices apart from security officers? You are free to tell me, yes, I know, or no, I do not know the answer.
Response. I think I now understood your question. The response would be, no, I don't know.
Je voudrais revenir sur un point.
I would like us to revisit one point which is a detail for you, but it is relevant to other issues as far as I'm concerned. It has to do with the number of times you met with tribunal investigators. We have on record a transcript we have already discussed with you, dated the 30th of December 2007, yesterday, when you started your testimony. The President asked you to tell the chamber how many times you met tribunal investigators, and you told the President that you met them once. Now, let me inform you that when you were interviewed by tribunal investigators, the interview was recorded. Do you recall the fact that your interview with the investigators was recorded?
Response. I gave interview to the investigators, and the interview was recorded. I was told also that the interview was audio recorded. That's what I was told.
Très bien. Et
Very well. And were you interviewed only during one day or in the course of several days?
Witness, I do not really get the question clearly.
Alors je vais la répéter.
I will repeat it.
La déposition que vous avez signée est datée du 5 décembre 2007.
The interview record you signed is dated 5th of December 2007. That is only one day in principle. Do you recall whether, in spite of the date mentioned on that document, you met tribunal investigators before the 5th of December 2007, for instance, the day before that?
Response. I met with other people on several occasions before that, but I don't remember where they were from. They were not necessarily the officers from the ECCC, but I remember that on the 5th of December 2007, a group of officers from the court came to conduct interview with me, the interview that lasted for just one day.
D'accord. Je pense que vous allez...
Very well. I believe you would understand why I am putting this question to you. I am putting it to you because I listened to the recording of your discussion with Mr. Chandaravan Chai and Mr. Stephen Heder, who were tribunal investigators assigned to interview on the 5th of December 2007. By the way, I requested a French translation of this document. The reference is D91/9.1. And the ERN numbers are as follows: French 00876649 250, Khmer 00875837 and in English it is 00876646 And when we read not what is written in the record, but what is stated in the audio recording, at one point, Mr. Stephen Heder asked the following question to you, and Ton and Tuon, whom we referred to yesterday, how about them? Question mark. When I read this, I wondered whether you met Mr. Stephen Heder the day before the 5th of December 2007. So my question to you is whether you recall meeting with him the day before the interview and discussing Ton and Chuan with him.
Response. I don't remember this because on the 5th of December, people met with me. I don't remember their names. And on the 7th of December, I was interviewed. Indeed, 2 days after they met me.
Et en mettant de côté la question des dates.
Setting aside the issue of dates, you have just referred to 2 meetings. Was it During the first meeting that you signed an interview record, or during the second meeting?
Response. Before I signed on the record of the interview, I had been interviewed on several occasions, or people came to see me on several occasions already, though I don't remember the exact date or the names of individuals who saw me. But I believe that this was the same group of people who came to interview me on the 5th of December. I just don't remember on how many occasions they saw me.
D'accord. Et
Very well. And during these preliminary meetings, did you discuss facts between 1975 and 1979? Did you discuss the substantive issues or the facts involved?
Response. Before the 5th of December, I don't remember having discussed anything about this, or perhaps I could forget about this, or maybe I talked briefly about this, but I just can't recollect it. But I remember that on the 5th of December 2007, I was interviewed where I gave details of the accounts.
d'accord.
Very well. I would like us to backtrack a little and revisit an issue that was broached yesterday by the prosecutor on this very matter regarding the flight from Phnom Penh after the 6th of January 1979. The prosecutor questioned you yesterday on the fact that Mr. Kirsampan fled to the Cardamom Mountains with the Khmer Rouge. May I ask you to tell us whether upon the arrival of the Vietnamese in 1979 you fled to the Cardamom Mountains with the Khmer Rouge yourself?
Response. Yes, I did flee to that area and remained with them all along.
Et pourquoi est-ce que vous êtes resté avec eux? Pourquoi est-ce que...
And why did you stay with them? Why didn't you do something else? What made you to stay with them up to 1979, that is to stay with the Khmer Rouge up to 1979?
Response. I had no choice. I had been working as a bodyguard during the 3 years period, and when we fled Phnom Penh, I still was loyal to him, and I gave protection for him or for them until 1990s. I had no intention to run away from them because I still maintain my job. What I did before in Phnom Penh would be the same as I did after fleeing the capital city into the jungle.
Enfin, ce sera le dernier sujet que je voudrais évoquer.
And this will be the last line of questioning. When you were interviewed and when you signed the interview record in December 2005, you stated that the first time you heard of famine, the famine that may have been prevalent during the Democratic Cambodia regime, it was over the radio broadcast, a radio broadcast from Phnom Penh or from the United States. And you said you received that information in 1980, 1982. Do you confirm this statement or you'd like to change it?
Response. Yes, I still stand by my statement.
Cela signifie donc, monsieur, qu'avant...
Do I understand, therefore, witness, that before the experience you had with the Khmer Rouge, you had not received such information before 1980, 1982?
Response. Yes, it is true.
Je n'ai pas d'autres questions, Monsieur le Président.
I have no further questions for the witness, Mr. President. Witness, I thank you.
President, thank you. The floor is now given to Ian Sari's defense to put questions to this witness. You may proceed. Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors. Good morning, everyone in and around the courtroom. Good morning, Mr. Solvi. My name is Ang Odom, the co-counsel for Mr. Ian Sari. I only have a few questions for you. And my questions only related to your knowledge regarding K1 office. The President just stated that in order to avoid the confusion regarding the word Khmer, Joan, or layers or floor in English, because the word Joan, it could be interpreted as the floor, first floor, second floor, etc. But in your statement, the word Joan in Khmer means the layer or the parameter of the defense. For example, the second defense layer is further from the first one, and the third defense layer is much further from the first one. Do you agree with me regarding the use of the term Joan in Khmer? Response, yes, I do. Thank you. Question. The guards at the first layer, was the first layer located within the compound of K1 or was it outside the compound of K1? Response. Guards at the first layer located themselves within the perimeter or the compound of K1 office that is inside the fence of the K1 compound. And they were known as the first layer protection. Thank you. Question. You also indicated that you were part of the second layer protection. What was the distance between the first and the second layer? Response. The second protection layer was almost near to the fence of the compound. So once you cross the fence of the compound, then you would reach the second layer. Thank you. Yesterday, you also indicated that from the second defense protection layer, you could not see through the first layer due to the tall or high wall. Is that correct? Response. Yes, that is correct. Question. You could not see the building due to the high wall, but could you see, for instance, the second floor of the K1 building? Response. We could see from the third floor upward if we were close to the fence. And if we were further, for example, 500 meters from the fence, we could see the second floor. Despite the distance, we would not be able to see the first floor of the building. Question. Yesterday, you testified that almost on a daily basis, you saw senior leaders, including Nuon Chea, Ieng Sary, and Khieu Sampon, entering the building of K1 office. Did you know the reason for them entering the K1 office building? Response. I did not know the reason for them going to K1 office building. Question. Did you ever hear from where you stood guard at the second layer that there were meetings inside the building at K1 compound? Response. Could you please repeat your question? It is unclear to me. My apology. Let me rephrase it. From where you stood guard at the second perimeter, did you ever hear? I mean hear from inside, to hear any voices from inside the building during any meeting that was held in there? Response. No, I did not hear any voice. Question. When those senior leaders were leaving the building, And after they had left, did anyone, including your superiors, that is Tan and Sot, tell you that a meeting was held inside the K1 office building? Response: no, we were not told of such event. Question: you also asserted that you saw senior cadres from various zones, sectors, and districts throughout the country coming to K1 office. My question is similar to my previous question. Did you know the purpose of those senior cadres coming from various zones, sectors, and districts through K1 office? Response: they all came to work in that office. That was my understanding. Question: you said coming to work. What does it mean? Can you elaborate further on this? Response: they came for a meeting. Question: again, from the location at the second defense perimeter where you stood guard, you could not see them or hear what they were talking about during the meetings of those senior cadres. Is this correct? Response: yes, that is correct. This is perhaps my last question. After those senior cadres coming from other locations left, did you know through any means of communication the purpose of their meeting or what kinds of decisions they made? Response: I could not grasp the situation back then or what kind of decisions they made before they left. Thank you, Mr. Sovic. I have no further question for you, and on behalf of my client, Mr. Insari, I wish you all the best and bon voyage. Mr. President, I have no further question for this witness. President, thank you, Counsel, and thank you, Mr. Witness. Mr. Sovic, the hearing of your testimony as a witness has come to a conclusion. You are now excused, and you can return to your residence or wherever you wish to go. The Chamber would like to thank you very much for your valuable time to testify for 1.5 days before this chamber with your patience and perseverance and to your best effort. Your testimony could contribute to ascertaining the truth in this case. We wish you all the best and have a safe journey back home. Court officer, in cooperation with the visual unit, please assist this witness for his return to his residence or wherever he wishes to go. The time is now appropriate for a short break, and we shall return at 10:30. And for the next session after we return, we will hear the testimony of another witness, that is TCW 754.
សូមក្រោកឈរ